Good morning, welcome back, and thank you for joining us today with our NASCAR DFS breakdown for the 2017 Bojangles Southern 500 held at Darlington Raceway. This unquestionably will be a very fun event, as they usually are. Few things we want to make note of here. 367-mile race, 367-lap race, so there's definitely merit for seeking out the lap leaders. This is not a super speedway track where you're looking at maybe 200 laps, 250 laps. This is a decent enough amount of laps led that I think there's a big deal to grabbing somebody who's going to lead a lot of laps. With that being said, on average over the past 5 years, Pole Sitter has led 158 laps. Over the last three years, the number actually goes up over 200. So this Pole Sitter, which we will get to in a moment, pretty much a lock in your cash game lineups. I really have to believe, if you're looking at 200 laps and that trend was to continue, you're looking at 50 points with laps led. You're probably looking at another 50 points with fastest laps to go along with it, to the point where the driver in the lead could wreck after 200 laps and still be sitting with 50, 60 fantasy points for the day. The pole position actually has the highest finish over the last 5 years of 6.2. I believe that's tied with 9th place, which another one of my favorite drivers this week sits in. Let me verify that. I don't want to be giving out incorrect information. There's actually the 8th starting spot, not the 9th. Starting 8th today is Joey Logano, and we know he's an absolute train wreck, so we know he will buck that trend. But the Pole Sitter has been the highest finisher at 6.2. Over the last 3 years, the Pole Sitters finished 2, 2, and 1 respectively. All of that being said, definitely think you need to look that route. As with just about any track, place differential is going to be meaningful. If there's meaningful place differential to be had, what do I mean by that? Well, there's a chance you could end up with a bunch of guys from the top price to, let's say, $8K and just need one more, really cheap driver. Sometimes that'll work where you have like 5 super studs and Gray Galding in your lineup, and it works out because Galding goes from 36th to 30th. But for the most part, my sweet spot is trying to find those drivers who can finish in the top 15, who are sitting 20th on back, because that's where it's not, at that point it doesn't so much become about the place differential, but it's a place differential plus the amount of points for the finishing position. Going along with that, I think you should also look for anybody who has the likelihood of a positive place differential but might not lead laps, because even if they're starting 10th, if they can move up to 5, that's not just 5 place differential points, but that's also 5 finishing position points that will go to their credit. So they'll be 10 points higher plus fastest laps, potential laps led, things of that nature from where they started. So this is, I would say, a good hybrid course, probably one of the best examples of a hybrid course. With all that being said, I think the most common starting point, and potentially a guy you might just want to lock in and just not think too much about, is Kevin Harvick. Not only is he the pole sitter, but he's the 5th highest priced driver, sitting at $9,700. Again, looking at the promise of 150 to 200 laps led, even if he drops down to 5th or 6th, with those kind of numbers, he's going to be on the winning roster. There's just no way around it, because you're looking at a situation where he's going to finish with 40 finishing points plus whatever he's racked up in laps led and fastest laps. So again, just no point in trying to avoid him. Has actually done extremely well here at Darlington, has been the fastest car all weekend. When you see things like that, it tends to just be a situation where you don't want to overthink it. if he had won the pole but he had shown poorly in practices, there's always merit considering that Truex and Busch are starting right behind him, and really Larson for that matter. But Harvick has shown a ton of speed, has been putting up big numbers all weekend. Even though it's going to be tough to break away from Truex on that starting line, Harvick's more than equipped to get it done. He is easily my favorite racer tonight. Now, with that being said, before I move on to another guy that I have a lot of interest in, it's also worth noting that looking at the laps led per track, the vast majority of laps are led from the first 3 positions. And it's really not even close after that. Over the last 5 years, 158 for first, 45 for second, 68 for third, and then 5, 9, 16, 6, 20, 1.63. So you get the point here. The point here is that you're not really seeing a ton of laps led past the first 3 positions. So depending on how the race goes, and it could definitely be a trap. It definitely could. I'm not suggesting, hey, you want to go out there and try to figure out a way to go Harvick, Truex, and Busch. Even though I do believe there is a high likelihood that one of those 3 guys will win this race, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if something happens like Harvick dominates this and leads 265 laps, you're not really going to get a ton of you're not going to get enough dominator points in the laps led categories from guys like Truex and Busch to offset the potential of guys who could see 10 to 15 place differential points and cost less. So there definitely is a huge risk-reward strategy there. If you play the top 3 drivers this week, you're really going to have to find some value there, and I just don't know if the value there is rational or not. It definitely appears to me like it could be an irrational thought to work off of. All right, moving on from there, Denny Hamlin, 9,900. Hamlin's actually priced right above Harvick, so if you're starting your lineup with these two, you're starting with the 4th and 5th highest priced drivers, and the deal with Hamlin is he really does not stand much of a chance to lead laps. As we said before, that 9th position over the last 5 races has only led 8 laps, and it is worth noting that you can't rely so heavily on that past data to suggest that Hamlin cannot lead laps here, because he certainly could. He's an excellent driver. He's got a terrific history at this track. I'm actually trying to pull up here the driver statistics, which naturally I cannot find for some reason. As far as the 10 race driver averages, and in this one it appears to be 6 races. Anyway, Hamlin has the best average finish at 6th. So right there off the bat, starting 9th, you're looking at a 6-point place differential. That's 3 place differential points plus 3 points for finishing position that he's going to have. He will almost certainly have some fastest laps here, and regardless of the fact that the 9th spot may not churn out a lot of laps led on normal, his pedigree for this track dictates that he definitely could do so. I think that these two are my favorite 2 guys to kind of bolster my lineups with, especially in cash games, because I can see a situation where Hamlin gets up into the top 5, maybe even as high as leading the race at some point. His car's running well, has been great in practice, and really if you look over the last few months has just been one of the best drivers in all of NASCAR. So he's someone I want to have a ton of exposure to this weekend as well. Without question, the most controversial play that I'm going to suggest this week is Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jr. has unquestionably been one of the worst drivers in NASCAR this year. That seems like it's an awful thing to say about a guy who means so much to the sport, but he really just has been. My personal belief is I do think that the concussion did yield more damage than he wants to admit publicly and doesn't want to quit in the middle of a campaign and is just trying to get through it the best he can. That said, he's had some top 10 finishes this year. This is a track where I love looking at history, but it's really hard to trust history with Earnhardt Jr. right now. But he's been very good here. Perhaps the week off has cleared up some things in his head where maybe he's going to be a little more refocused going into this thing. He's starting 22nd, has a car that appears to be capable of finishing within the top 12, 13, 15 this week. And that 7 place differential points, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, finding a guy like Earnhardt or potentially Casey Kane who have cars starting past that 20 mark but can get up into the top 10-ish area. If they're able to do that, they're bringing you a lot of points to your side of the equation. It's tough to say what Earnhardt's ownership is going to be. I think there's still a contingent of fantasy players who are NASCAR fans, and for most people, that means they're Earnhardt fans, they're Junior fans. So I think Junior will get some of those loyalty buy-ins. I think for a large swath of the DFS crowd, though, they've probably had their fill of being burned by Earnhardt, will turn the other direction, and I'd probably put his ownership somewhere in the 15% mark, and that's a spot that I don't mind jumping into this weekend at all. Wrapping things up, I want to go to Chris Buescher. One thing about Chris Buescher is this guy basically never practices overly well. So if you're looking at his practice finishes, I believe it's 22nd and 21st in this weekend's practice. He qualified 27th, 29th actually, I do apologize for that. He qualified 29th. No, it is 27th. I'm sorry, 27th he qualified. Has a 17th place finish at this track in the past, which was his only appearance last year. He's a guy who's been sneaking into a lot of top 15s. We saw a period where Danica Patrick was doing that regularly. Chris Buescher seems to have snuck into that role. Priced at 6,600, he's like that perfect skeleton key to a lot of the lineups I want to do. I feel like his starting position is very conducive to his driving style. He's very smart, often starts in this late 20s range, manages to finish 15th or better. If you're going to give me 12 place differential points plus a top 15 finish, with if things get out of hand somehow, his possibilities for finishing are higher than 15. But I like him at the price. I like him with the 12-point place differential upside. I'm going to have a lot of Chris Buescher this weekend. That'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching. I really, truly appreciate the fact that you spent the last 12 minutes listening to me ramble about this NASCAR event. I'm very excited for it. In the meantime, please subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Check us out at researchfantasy.com. Follow us on Twitter at researchandwin, and join us again next week.